He lived alone, deep in the woods. Quiet, invisible, just an old man with a haunted past. But when a gang of bikers picked him as the next victim, they had no idea. They were waking a trained soldier, a man who survived the darkest wars. And when the storm came, it was not just Woodside, it was him. What happened next shocked everyone, and changed the forest forever. They thought he was weak. They thought he was alone. They were wrong. The sun beat down on the quiet station at the edge of town. Heat shimmered off the dust. The air smelled like gasoline and hot rubber. Birds were silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. A black man stood alone beside an old pickup truck. He wore faded jeans and a plain gray t-shirt. His boots were scuffed, but clean. He moved slowly, feeling his tongue. His calm and steady. His name was Elijah. To most, he looked like a mechanic or a farmer. No one saw the soldier beneath the silence. Then came the roar. 6 motorcycles pulled up fast, engines growling like wolves. They were loud, covered in leather and tattoos. The leaders passed near Elijah's boot. "Hey, old man," he barked. "You in the wrong place." Elijah did not look up. He replaced the GCDP. "Not here, trouble," he said quietly. The second biker laughed. "Too bad. We are." They stepped off their bikes. One cracked his knuckles. Another pulled off his chain. They circled. Elijah stood still. His hand brushed the side of his truck. He looked at them for the first time. His eyes were hard, unshaken. "Like you," he said. The leader grinned. "You think we are scared of you?" One lunged. Fast. A wide swing at Elijah's head. Elijah stepped aside. The biker stumbled past him. A second charge. Elijah caught his wrist. Twisted. The crack of bone was sharp and clean. The man screamed. The others froze. Too late. Elijah moved like lightning. Precise. Calm. One by one, they hit the ground. Groaning. Shouting. Cursing. The leader backed away. His voice shook. "What are you?" Elijah stepped closer. "Sergeant, use me. 22 years." His voice was I. "Station. Follow you. Conduct." He stared into the man's eyes. "I buried better men than you in places darker than your soul." The biker turned and ran. The others followed, leaving oil stains and blood behind. Elijah turned back to his truck. He opened the door. The wind returned, soft and warm. The pump beat, finished. He climbed in. The engine rumbled to life. Tires crunched over broken pride. Elijah drove away. Calm, silent, but watching. The highway stretched out behind him. Empty, wide. The sky was streaked with orange and purple. Sunset was falling like a curtain. Elijah kept one hand on the wheel. The opter rested near a folded paper on the passenger seat. It was a letter. Worn edges, creases from too many readings. The last letter from his son. "A Marine. Gone now." Elijah blinked slowly. The road blurred, just for a second. But he did not stop. He never did. In his rearview mirror, dust still rode where the biker had scattered. They would not forget him, but he would not remember them. They were just noise. Static. He had seen worse, felt worse. He had buried friends in sand so hot it burned through the boots. He wounded boys crying their mothers in the dead of night. Watched the sunrise over fields full of silence. He had already walked through hell. This was just a reminder of who he had been, of what still lived beneath his quiet. He pulled off the highway onto a dirt road. Trees lined both sides, tall and dark. The kind of pets was a story whispered in the leaves. He stopped beside a smuggling wooden steps. A porch swing swaying gently. Home. Elijah stepped out. Stretched. His face cracked like dry wood. But his mind was sharp. Every step measured. Inside the room was clean. Meanwhile, a photo sat on the shelf. His son, smiling in uniform. Elijah lit a candle beneath it. The flame flickered once, then held steady. He sat down, closed his eyes, listened, not to the world, but to his breath. Steady, controlled, alive. Because no matter how far the storm reached, It would never shake the soldier who had learned to stand still. Even when the crowd itself tried to break him, the room settled into silence. Only the soft hum of insects outside, and the ticking of a small clock on the each second passed like a heartbeat. Elijah opened his eyes, reached beneath the table, pulled out a violet. It was old metal wedges dulled by time. He laid it on the table. Fingers brushed the lid. Slow. Whisper. Inside wormholes. Dog tags. A folded flag. And a notebook. Black letter. Edges frayed. He opened it. The pages were filled with names. Friends. Brothers. Lost in places the world forgot. He read each one. Mouth silent. Eyes burning. He never let himself forget. That was the promise. To carry them. Even when his legs grew weak. Even when no one else remembered. He closed the notebook. Rested his hand on the cover. The candle flame flickered. Then held firm again. The door creaked. Just the wind. But Elijah's hand moved instinctively to the old combat knife under his chair. He did not draw it. He did not need to. All instinct slewed deep. Already. But this pet was safe. For now. He stood and stepped onto the porch. Looked out at the fading light. Stars were beginning to show. He watched them carefully. Each one a memory. Each one a name. And beneath them, the land was quiet, but not asleep. The wolves still roamed. And Elijah, he would always be watching. Because sometimes peace does not come from laying down the sword. Sometimes it comes from knowing exactly where it is. Elijah leaned against the wooden post of the porch. The swing creaked beside him, empty, gently moving. He lit a cigarette with a worn silver lighter. A gift from his captain. Another name in the notebook. Smoke curled upward, slow and lazy. The smell was sharp, familiar. A piece of the past he had never shaken. He stared into the dark trees. They whispered in the wind, but said nothing he would. Behind those trees was a trail. And at the end of that trail, a clearing where he buried his dog last spring. Tango. Photo by his side. Gone quietly. Had in Elijah's lap. He exhaled slowly. That was the kind of death worry warrior. But few received. Far off, a distant engine broke the quiet. Elijah's eyes narrowed. Too late for hunters. Too early for drunks. The cigarette burned low. He dropped it. Crushed it under his boot. His hand slid under his shirt. Rested on cold steel. Not fear. Just readiness. The taillights came into view. A single bike. No pack. Elijah stepped off the porch, silent. The bike stopped at the edge of the gravel. The rider cut the engine. Dismounted. Helmet stayed on. They stood still. Watching him. Elijah said nothing. Waited. The rider removed the helmet. Long brown hair spilled out. A woman. Amazed. Eyes shut. Tired. But not broken. She held out something wrapped in cloth. I believe this belongs to you, she said. Her voice steady but low. He took it slowly. Unwrapped it. A ring. His son's. Elijah looked up. His face unreadable. Where did you get this? She hesitated. I sold with him. Second recon. We were ambushed. He gave it to me, Bill. Her voice cracked. She did not finish. Elijah nodded. He did not ask more. He did not need to. Pen recognized pen. Without a word, he turned and opened the cabin door. Stepped aside. A silent invitation. She followed. Behind them, the star watched. High. Still. And witness to a war that never really ended. Inside, the cabin was dim. The candle still flickered on the shelf. The woman paused at the doorway. Her eyes scanned the room. The photo. The flag. The medals. She stepped in, slow and careful, looking into a memory. Elijah closed the door behind her. He placed the ring gently on the table. Sit, he said softly. She lowered herself into the wooden chair. Hands in her lap. Elijah poured 2 cups of water. No whiskey. Not tonight. He handed her a cup. Their eyes met. Both carried weight. Unspoken. Unshakable. I never got to tell him goodbye, she whispered. Elijah sat across from her. Neither did I. The silence between them was heavy. But it was not empty. It was charred. She reached into her jacket, pulled out a small patch, worn, frayed at the edges. Recon insignia. Teased me, she said. Elijah Jr. pulled me out of the wreck before second blast. Her hands trembled. He was bleeding. Said I better not waste it. Tears welled in her eyes. But she did not cry. Not fully. Elijah stared at the patch. His fingers curled into fists. Then relaxed. He reached out, took it gently, placed it beside the ring. He would want you said, Elijah said. The woman nodded. I have been running since that day. Looking for a page to stop. Elijah stood slowly, walked to the shelf, took down the notebook, opened it, flipped past the names, stopped on a blank page. He handed it to her. She stared at it, then him. What is this? A page living, he said. Her lips parted, but no words came. She looked down at the blank page. Then, with a shaking hand, she wrote her name. The candlelight flickered. Brighter. Steady out. Elijah turned to the window. Outside, the forest breathed. Alive. And for first time in a long time. So did he. The woman closed the notebook gently. She set it on the table like something sacred. Elijah remained at the window. The trees were still. The night come. But something in the air had shifted. The cabin no longer felt like a tomb. It felt like a threshold. Behind them, the notebook waited. One name added. Many still unspoken. But the silence no longer felt empty. It felt like healing. The woman stood, walked over to the photo on the shelf. She touched the frame, traced his son's face with one trembling finger. He talked about this page, she said. Elijah turned. She smiled faintly. Said his old melody in the woods like a ghost. Elijah's expression softened. He was wrong. I never let it followed me home. She nodded. I know the feeling. They stood in silence, not awkward, but waited with mutual knowing. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees again. A soft, rustling voice, as if even the forest knew the story was not over. Elijah opened the door. The cool air washed in. Come, he said. She followed. They stepped out onto the porch. The stars above were countless, unmoving. The world around them silent and vast. A small fire pit set to the side, unused. Elijah crouched, gathered dry wood, stacked it with care. She watched, then knelt beside him. Held, their hands smooth in rhythm. No comments. No need. The fire sparked. Then caught. Orange and gold flames licked upward, warming their faces. Elijah leaned back. His reflected the firelight. I built this page too deeply. She nodded. But you did not. No, he said. I just forgot how to lie. She picked up a stick, poked the fire. You remembered tonight. He looked at her. Not alone. They sat by the fire, shoulder to shoulder. No more words. No more ghost. Just the crackle of flame. The breath of the red. And two soldiers. Survivors. Finding light again. The fire crackled gently between them. Sparks rose into the air, drifting upward like silent prayers. Above, the star held their vigil. Elijah stared into the flames. His fingers tapped slowly on his knee, an old habit from long watching. Beside him, the woman rested her elbows on her thigh. Her eyes were fixed on the dancing firelight. I never stayed anywhere longer than a few nights, she said quietly. Until now. Elijah glanced at her. You do not have to keep running. She turned her head, met his eyes. I know. A long silence passed, took with the weight of things not said. Then she asked, what was he like? Your son. Elijah's gaze softened. Brave, he said. Too brave, maybe. Always smiling. Even in the worst moments. He paused. He used to sneak into the woods behind the house. Said he was training for danger. She smiled at that. That sounds like him. Elijah raised an eyebrow. Oh, he told you daughter. Everyone, she said. Her voice cracked slightly. He said you were the strongest man he ever knew. Elijah looked down. The firelight shimmered against the moisture in his face. I was only ever strong because I had to be. For him. He rubbed his palms together slowly. I failed him once. I will not do it again. She sat up straighter. You did not fail him. You gave him the courage to save someone else. Elijah turned his head, looked at her fondly. You are here because of him. She nodded. Then you are alive because of him, she said. The wind stirred the trees, cool and gentle now. The fire hissed softly. She added a new log, sparks leaping upward. I want to help, she said. Here. With whatever you need. Elijah studied her for a moment, then nodded once. All right. He stood, slow but steady. His tone sagged, but his heart felt lighter. He extended his hand to her. She took it. Her grip was firm, grounded. Together, they walked back into the cabin. The fire burned behind them. Not just wood and flame, but memory, purpose, and the first spark of something new. The morning came gently. Pale light filtered through the curtains. Birdsong broke the silence like a whisper. Elijah wrote beef the sun touched the porch. Oh habits. He washed his face in cold water. Looked at himself in the mirror. Lines curled deep. Is that had seen too much? But clearer now. He stepped to the side. The dew on the grass soaked his boot. The air was crisp, new. Behind him, the door creaked open. She appeared, tying her hair back. Coffee, she asked, holding up 2 mugs. He took one. Steam curled between them. Frost coming soon, Elijah said, scanning the tree. She nodded. Then we have work to do. They walked the land together. The fences had sagged in places. Gaps where they had passed. She pointed to the shade. You have to. Elijah opened the door. The smell of oil and dust hit them. More rust than steel, but they still were. She smiled, rolled up her sleeves. And they began. Hemming, sewing, lifting, fixing. By noon, sweat traced down Elijah's back. His hand sagged. But it was a good ache. Earned. Not from war, but from building. She worked beside him, sleeves tanned, face smartened, and laughing. A sound he had not heard on this land in years. He found himself smiling, quietly, without effort. Later, days under the oak tree. The same tree where Elijah used to watch his son climb. Now the leaves whispered about them. Said, steady. You ever think about leaving, she asked. He shook his head. Thought about it once. But this land, it remembered. She looked at him. So do you. He sipped the last of his tea. I am learning how to remember without pain. She leaned back on her elbows. Eyes closed. Then maybe I will learn that too. The wind moved through the grass like breath. The land was stealing. So were they. And in the silence between them, there was no past chasing. No future feed. Only the present. Sit. Alive. And dash. Afternoon shadows stretched long across the yard. The repaired fence stood proud, steady once more. Elijah wiped his hands with a rag. Grease and dirt streaked the fabric, but his eyes shone with quiet pride. She stood beside him, arms crossed, admiring the work. It holds, she said. He nodded. For now. But like everything, it needs watching. They headed back to the cabin, side by side. They stepped slow. Not from weariness, but from a quiet peace neither had felt in years. A stray dog appeared near the tree line. Skinny, dusty. Its ribs visible beneath patchy fur. It froze when it saw them. She knelt, whistled softly. The dog tilted its head. Then, cautiously, stepped forward. Elijah watched in silence. When the dog finally reached her, she held out her hand. It sniffed, then licked her fingers once. She smiled. It wants to stay. Elijah chuckled, raw and genuine. Seems we are collecting stress now. She looked up at him. So were we. The dog followed them back. Its tail wagged slowly, unsure but hopeful. Inside, she poured water into a bowl. Elijah tossed some leftover meat into another. The dog ate like it had not touched food in days. When it finished, it curled by the door, guarding, or maybe simply grateful. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in burnt orange and soft purple. She lit the fire again, this time without hesitation. Elisha grabbed his notebook, sat at the table, and turned to a new page. He picked up the pen, paused, then wrote a name, hers. Below it, a second. The dog is. No rank, no wounds, just names. Ally. Present. She looked over his shoulder. Read the names. You really do not forget anyone, do you? He shook his head. Not anyone. Who said? The first star blinked into the sky. And inside that wooden cabin, a home was no longer haunted. It was tall. Afternoon shadows stretched long across the yard. The repaired fence stood proud, steady once more. Elisha wiped his hands with a rag. Grease and dirt streaked the fabric, but his face shone with quiet pride. She stood beside him, arms crossed, admiring the work. It holds, she said. He nodded. For now. But like everything, it needs watching. They headed back to the cabin, side by side, the steps slow. Not from weariness, but from a quiet peace neither had felt in years. A stray dog appeared near the tree line. Skinny, dusty, its ribs visible beneath patchy fur. It froze when it saw them. She knelt, whistled softly. The dog tilted its head. Then, cautiously, stepped forward. Elisha watched in silence. When the dog finally reached her, she held out her hand. It sniffed, then licked her fingers once. She smiled. It wants to stay. Elisha chuckled, law and genuine. Seems we are collecting stress now. She looked up at him. So were we. The dog followed them back. Its tail wagged slowly, unsure but hopeful. Inside, she poured water into a bowl. Elisha tossed some leftover meat into another. The dog ate like it had not touched food in days. When it finished, it curled by the door, guarding, or maybe simply grateful. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in burnt orange and soft purple. She lit the fire again, this time without hesitation. Elisha grabbed his notebook, sat at the table, and turned to a new page. He picked up the pen, paused, then wrote a name, hers. Below it, a second. The dog ate. No rank, no wounds, just names. Ally. Pretend. She looked over his shoulder, read the names. You really do not forget anyone, do you? He shook his head. Not any. Who said? The first star blinked into the sky. And inside that wooden cabin, a home was no longer haunted. It was tall. Morning broke gently after the storm. Rain had washed the land clean. The air smelled of pine and wet earth. Sunlight streamed through the trees, catching on every drop like glass. Inside the cabin, the fire had died down to embers, but warmth still lingered. Elisha stood on the porch, aim in hand, steam rising from the rim. The woman joined him, blankets still draped over her shoulder. The dog trotted out behind her, tail wagging. They watched the woods in silence. No words were needed. The trees stood tall. The earth, damp but solid. The fence they had repaired still held strong. Elisha took a long sit. You stayed through the storm, he said. She smiled. So did you. He looked at her. A moment, his face softened into something rarely seen. Peace. Real. Earned. Lasting. I think, he said slowly, this is what home feels like. She nodded. Not a pet. A choice. They stood there, two people shaped by war, scarred by loss, but not broken. The land, the cabin, the silence between them. It all felt different now. Not just somewhere to survive, but somewhere to begin again. And as the sun lifted higher, casting gold across the hills, Elisha reached for the notebook one last time, opened to a blank page, wrote a single line. This is where it begins. He closed it gently. The wind passed through the trees, soft and approving. The past was still there, but it no longer led. From this moment on, they would write something new. Together. And they would face whatever came. Not as soldiers, but as survivors who chose to live and to stay. Night settled soft and slow over the hills. Crickets chirped in rhythm. A steady hum beneath the quiet. The fire inside the cabin cast golden shadows across the walls. Elisha sat back in his chair, notebook closed, is steady on the flame. She rested on the couch nearby, legs curled beneath her, the dog at her feet. The warmth in the room was not just from the fire. It came from something deeper. Something earned. She glanced at him. You ever think peace would look like this? Elichu's thought tensed, then relaxed. I stopped trying to picture peace a long time ago. He looked toward the window. The glass reflected the firelight and the star beyond. But maybe peace does not come all at once. Maybe it arrives in pieces, quieting. She smiled gently. Like fixing a fence. Or sharing coffee at sunrise. Or a dog that chooses to stay. Elisha nodded. And someone who chooses not to run. She looked down, hands folded in her lap. I ran for a long time. Thought if I stopped moving, the memories would catch up. He met her gaze. They always do. But here you do not have to carry them alone. The dog stirred slightly, then settled again. The logs shifted in the fire, a soft crackle filling the space. She stood, walked to the window, pulled the curtain aside. Storm is coming, she said. Sky is gone heavy. Elisha rose and joined her. Dark clouds gathered beyond the rift. Lightning flashed faintly in the distance. But neither of them stepped back. He looked at her. Storms always pass. Luckily. She nodded. And we will still be here when they do. They turned from the window, moved around the cabin, closing shutters, securing latches. The wind picked up, rattling the porch swing hood side. Thunder grumbled low, like a warning. They worked in silence, side by side. No fee, no rush. Just purpose, just presence. When everything was ready, Elisha returned to his chair. She sat across from him, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The fire flared as the wind howled outside. Rain began to fall. Soft at first, then harder. But inside, they were steady. They were strong. And for the first time in years, Elisha did not brace the storm. He welcomed it. Morning broke gently after the storm. Rain had washed the land clean. The air smelled of pine and wet earth. Sunlight streamed through the trees, catching on every drop like glass. Inside the cabin, the fire had died down to embers. But warmth still lingered. Elisha stood on the porch, aim in hand, steam rising from the rim. The woman joined him, blanket still draped over her shoulder. The dog trotted out behind her, tail wagging. They watched the woods in silence. No words were needed. The trees stood tall. The earth, damp but solid. The fence they had repaired still held strong. Elisha took a long sip. You stayed through the storm, he said. She smiled. So did you. He looked at her. A moment, his face softened into something rarely seen. Peace. Real. Earned. Lasting. I think, he said slowly, this is what hope is like. She nodded. Not a page. A choice. They stood there, two people shaped by war, scarred by loss, but not broken. The land, the cabin, the silence between them. It all felt different now. Not just somewhere to survive, but somewhere to begin again. And as the sun lifted higher, casting gold across the hills, Elisha reached for the notebook one last time, opened to a blank page, wrote a single line. This is where it begins. He closed it gently. The wind passed through the trees, soft and approving. The past was still there, but it no longer led. From this moment on, they would write something new. Together. And they would face whatever came. Not as soldiers, but as survivors who chose to live and to stay.